Well, hello there. Excuse me. Oh boy, what an already great way to start this video, right? So hello there. So this module we're going to look at is module 77. Now, a quick word about this. The actual textbook module, this thing, is in the PDF for Unit 5 rather than Unit 4. So if you're looking for it and you're like, where is this thing? Go to Unit 5, you'll find it in there. And so I put that link in our weekly schedules document as well. So this module talks about how do we deal with the problems of monopolies, right? How do we deal with anti-collusive behaviors is another way to think about it. So it's kind of a useful video, a useful module actually. What I will tell you is that the majority of it goes through a series of laws like the Sherman Antitrust Act, the Clayton Antitrust Act, the FTC Act. And you don't really need to know all the ins and outs of like this law did this and this law did that. None of those appear on any of our exams. But we should be familiar with like what are some of the things that they make illegal, right? Like what are the things that are not allowed in terms of monopolies, because that's how we regulate monopolies. So first question says, which of the following businesses practices would they be legal under antitrust law? Explain. And so relatively quick answers are fine for these. The first one says you have a patent for a fax machine. You can tell this book's a little out of date and therefore are the only person able to sell that type of fax machine. That's fine, right? You can do that. In order to buy your fax machine, you require the purchaser to buy a service contract from you, even though other people have excellent service for the machine. And that is the problem. That's illegal. And that's because it's called a tying arrangement, a tying arrangement. And if you go back and read through the text, it talks about tying arrangements that the Clayton Antitrust Act of 1914 actually goes through and makes that illegal. Here they are, tying arrangements, because it's the idea of tying the purchase of one product to the purchase of another product. So that's kind of the issue with it. B, it says you have invented a new type of correction fluid that does an amazing job covering up mistakes. In order to buy the correction fluid, you require purchasers to buy all their office supplies. That's also illegal. It's the exact same issue. Because it's a tying arrangement. You can't say, hey, you want this product, then you also have to buy this product. You know, if there's exclusive contracts with those sorts of things anyways. C, you own a car dealership and plan to buy the dealership across the street and merge the two companies. There are several other car dealerships in town. So that's the key factor, is like that there are several others in the area. So this is legal because it doesn't come across, it doesn't eliminate, right, all competition in that market. And if you're wondering where does that come from, like where do we make that illegal, read through the part about the FTC Act of 1914, which really outlaws that idea. And also the Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890 does the same thing. So part D says you and your only other competitor in the state have an agreement that anytime a new firm tries to enter, you will both drop your prices for long enough to run the new entrant out of business before returning to your previous prices. That's illegal. And we would say that's illegal because it's an unfair output restriction. Output restriction. Basically, you're going to crank down the amount of output that you produce, jack up the price, or jack down the price and mess with the price. And in that case, you're moving the price really low by dumping product on the market. But in other words, it's illegal, and it's under, if you're looking for it, it's over here in terms of like the FTC's goal is to promote lower prices, higher output, actions that prevent the new entry of firms. So it's the FTC Act of 1914. So all of this would be very helpful if you were planning on going into like management for a large corporation or something. You would take classes and that sort of thing. And you'd hire nice lawyers who would handle this sort of thing for you. Number 2 says the FYI in this module discusses the possibility that regulators would set prices for wind energy on the basis of ATC, and explain why policymakers who don't want to pay a subsidy would choose ATC over MC pricing in the market for wind energy. And the easiest way to do this is actually through an example. So if we said price and quantity, and then we have a demand and a marginal revenue curve that looks like that, and we'd say like we have ATC coming down, and then we have MC like this. This is just a natural monopoly, right? So if we were to set the price to be here, price ceiling right there, then they produce this quantity. And that quantity is no subsidy required, right? Now, if we didn't do that, if we said you guys can do whatever you want, we know they would produce at MR equals MC, which is this quantity, and they would charge way up here this very high price, right? So this is the price in the free market. This is the price that we would say is the no subsidy price. And then this is the price where we would say you'd have to subsidize them if we set it to be the marginal cost. And you could get, like, if you think about it, you would get this really high quantity of output, Q2, and we'll say Q1. So this would be, Q sub 0, 0, 1, 2. But the problem with telling them, hey, you're going to marginal cost price is that you would then have to subsidize them up to the ATC, and it would cost money. And policymakers don't necessarily want to do that, but you get a little bit more quantity by doing this ATC. So it's kind of like the happy middle ground is the way to think about it. So, okay, let's take a look at multiple choice questions. Question number 1 is about the Sherman Antitrust Act. And again, that's not going to appear on the quiz. It's not going to appear on the exam. So I'm just going to tell you the answer is E. It sought to do all those things. Number 2, a natural monopoly exists when over the relevant range for demand, increasing the output level results in a lower ATC. That's literally what I just drew up here, is that throughout the range for which demand exists, you're always in the downward sloping ATC. So that answer is B. Number 3 says, which of the following is the most common policy approach to a natural monopoly? We don't want to break them up, right? As opposed to an artificial monopoly where we're like, we can break those up anytime. A natural monopoly, we want to regulate the price. So that is B. And we looked at that also in the lecture video. Number 4 and 5 both go with this graph. So we'll kind of take a look here. It's a little bit hard to see, so I'm going to zoom in just a bit here. 4 and 5, it says, without government intervention, the monopolist will produce how much stuff and charge what? So we look and we see MC intercepts with MR here at Q2, and we go up to the demand curve to find the price, and that's P1. So Q2, P1, and oh my goodness, I'm getting old. I think that's C. Q2, P1 is C. And then the last one says the lowest regulated price the government could expect this monopolist to maintain in the long run. In other words, if they don't want to have to subsidize them, right? If we push the price too low, then the monopolist loses money, and then we have to subsidize them. So the lowest price would be wherever the demand or the price intercepts ATC. So that's here at this purple and light blue line, and that's price 3. So that is also C. Okie dokie, now we're going to do that very last free response problem. Keep going, keep going. 3 different public policy approaches to monopoly. Okay, that's fairly straightforward. One we know is price regulation, right? Price regulation. And that's the most common for a natural monopoly. 2 would be break up or prevent it from forming. And so that's an option, especially if it's an artificial monopoly. And so this would be for a natural, this would be for an artificial. And then the third would be public ownership. Public ownership. And that's more common with a natural monopoly than anything else. So the book talks a little bit about how things like sometimes utility companies or things like railroads and things like that are sometimes publicly owned as well. Okay, so hopefully this helped you. I'll see you next time.